Well, now here we are, and I feel like we should both have guitars and we should sing the whole show.
I got
And you
mine.
and you kind of look the part. When I get my trucker hat going, I look as cracker as anybody. Being descended from a long line of crackers on both sides, I can really do it. Yeah, man, the two of us, we could go on the road and have like a little like a Oliver Anthony spin-off band. Or no, a cover band, just straight cover band.
Yeah.
We won't try to be original. Just we'll do Oliver Anthony cover. We will be the first band to cover Rich Men North of Richmond, and we will be a success because that branch of our political culture is destitute of pop culture representations, let's just say. They've been looking for this song for a long time, and finally they got it. They've been looking for a singer like that for a long time, and finally they got it. And boy, did they get it. The right wing is just loving this. It's just the greatest song ever made.
Might have some Scotch Irish blood in him from the looks of it.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, he and I are definitely related.
Yeah.
We're from the same. My mother's family's from the North Carolina upcountry, and well, he's Virginia upcountry. So yeah, right. Probably Scots Irish. Yeah. I don't know, man. What do you think of the song? You're the musician.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of different takes you can have on it. Like, just on merit of the song, it's a pretty good song. Like, when the pre-chorus comes in the second time and you're like, oh, This is the chorus of the song. I want to sing this again. Like, I think it's a good song. I think he has talent. A lot of guitar nerds are ripping on him for using a capo. They just don't understand folk music.
That's stupid.
Yeah. If you use a capo too high, guitar players will get mad at you.
Right. Doesn't that come from that's sort of a bluegrass thing, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I think in all folk styles, you just learn a position and you move it around for your voice. Like, it's about the song. It's not about your guitar chops, although he sounds great in both respects. Yeah. What I like about this song, though, is that it inspired hit pieces both in Rolling Stone and National Review. So it probably pissed off the right people.
What did the NR say about it?
Oh, that he should stop complaining because everybody in America has it so good. This is the best place to live. If you're working for bullshit pay, that's your fault. If you're not happy in this country, that's your fault.
Oh, interesting take.
Yeah.
I immediately think of Trump's very first cheerleader, which was whom? Do you remember? Milo Yiannopoulos.
Okay.
Who infamously wore as his part of his campaign of provocation a T-shirt that just said "Stop being rich, stop being poor" on it, and that was his message. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm encountering a contradiction in Trump land here, perhaps, right? Because as a matter of fact, Trump very much ran on being an opponent of the victimization of the working class of America by government and business elites. This is classic American populism, by the way. Joining together the business and the government elites as one hostile entity and targeting them, and then identifying the people as a broad coalition, as a matter of fact, and almost always cross-racial. If you look at populist movements in America, and this was the first course I ever taught at Columbia University, was in the history of populism in the United States. So I know a little bit about this, but yeah, they were often thought of as cross-racial, cross-class, because they saw the middle class, like small landowners, small business owners, as also being very much victimized by the elites. And so this song comes out of that tradition. It's very classic, I think, example of that tradition. I don't know anything about Oliver Anthony. I don't know where he comes from, what he knows, what he's read, what his political influences are. But he clearly has some kind of organic or intellectual connection to that tradition. And being, from working class Virginia, that's quite possible. But yeah, the thing is, this, in my view, has some virtues, and it has some things I'd like for us to talk about. You know, like it's not the most concise analysis one can find. Number one. Number two, it mentions nothing about war, which every good populist movement in America has identified as the number one cause, number one issue, including Trump, by the way, including MAGA. MAGA has always been fantastic about this, always had war at the top of its agenda. This song doesn't mention that, doesn't reference it, doesn't even, you know, the reference to the Epstein Island, it's just so pathetic. Like, it's just so trivial ultimately in the grand scheme of things. I think, unless there really is some vast extortion scheme going on in which, you know, they are holding this someone's holding this information over Bill Clinton's head and forcing him to have the Clinton initiative bribe politicians, whatever. I don't think so. Anyway, so it's just cheap. Also, whatever. I don't like that. Unless there's an actual argument attached to it, like Whitney Webb. You know, she does actual research on this. She's made actual arguments about the political implications of it, the political significance of it, although I'm not convinced by, I think, her broader suggestions about what it means. But nonetheless, she's doing serious work, making real arguments. That's great, even if I disagree with it. But this is just cheap. Panders to the sort of like anti-groomer mentality, the pedophile-obsessed right wing, just dumb shit. It's sort of incoherent, I think, the song. I don't quite get what these things all have in common, as a matter of fact. And who are the rich men? And why are they north of Richmond? And I'm surprised that no one on the left, I haven't seen this, has noticed that about the song. That it harkens back to the Civil War, bros. Like, yikes.
That's why I like the song. That's why
I was gonna say that's why my buddy Michael likes it, but you know, the enlightened elite who love the Negroes frown upon such sentiment, because we are the true friends of the Negro, Michael. And you Southerners, you were actually the enemies of the Negro, continue to be. We are their friends, okay? We let them into our colleges. And we have given them jobs. We've made them Supreme Court justices, presidents, okay? Whereas you people say the N-word and you mean it. And you use the hard R.
Only because my bike got stolen.
So how dare you? My bike was stolen by a black guy when I was 9 years old. His name was Daniel. And if anybody has any information, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, no, I've had the longest enmity with black people because they were beating my ass when I was a child.
Now imagine how bad it would be if you called them a mean name.
Right. Which it's funny enough, even though I was truly oppressed by black people when I was a child, I will stand by this. I can give you countless examples. Never once did I use that word or think the word. I never once did, because I was raised in a left-wing family. So I had to do all this, all this repressive stuff from my politics and my own psyche. I mean, I know many people who grew up here who had the exact same experience and remain like lovers of the Negro, you know, liberal leftist, you know, racial liberals who love affirmative action and have nothing bad to say about black people at all, but they got their asses kicked like on a regular basis and sort of like, and also just horrendously sort of harassed and teased and shit by black kids in the schools here. It was horrendous. I mean, there was a summer, it was similar. It was close to the summer when my bike got stolen. I spent an entire summer in my house. I never left my house because there was this kid in the neighborhood who threatened to beat me up. And I literally didn't leave the house for the entire summer because of that. But there was all sorts of instances of that. There was a fist fight every day in my school in junior high, like crazy shit. But anyway, so yeah, this song is at least the title of it, and I suppose the framing of it, identifies the elite as rich men in the North who want total control. I sort of like that piece of it. That's yeah, right. That's my favorite piece of it, though, is the sort of reference to the surveillance state, which I think is a real thing. And I think, yes, I do think the progressive elite has shown itself to be interested in total control. I think that's indisputable at this point. I like that, but again, I don't know. It doesn't exactly hang together. Yeah,
there's some anti-Puritanism of the Yankees in there with the they want to know what you think, want to know what you do.
No, man, but he also has the dig at the obese, which I thought also was sort of, even though I've ranted about the obese on this very show. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. It's a 5'3", 300-pound guy who's getting welfare. Is that what the line is?
Yeah.
So who is that mean? Who is that?
Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds.
Fudge rounds, right?
Yeah.
I guess. Okay, fine. That's not bad. That's not bad, actually.
That line is a little too goofy, I think, for the song, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, just lyrically it sucks, but but politically, okay, I'm down. That's cool. I don't mind saying that to Americans. I mean, especially those who vote. If you're going to vote and you do any of that stuff, yeah. Mm-mm. So if you're just receiving it, though, and you don't vote, I say God bless you. Take advantage of the system. You didn't ask to be born here. You didn't ask to be an American citizen. Here they are offering you a check, and you don't have anything to do with that, but they hand you a check. Of course you take that, dumbass. But I don't know what he's referring to. I don't know. It's a mixed bag. Do you like the politics of it?
I don't, honestly, I don't agree with the National Review guy, essentially, and from where he's coming from.
That's stupid. Yeah, that the creed. It's like, well, we're never supposed to complain.
Yeah.
Of course, relative to, Ghana, yeah, we live awesomely. But are we not supposed to complain if our, standard of living declines or, stops increasing? Mr. National Review dude who lives in a very fancy house in Arlington, Virginia, no doubt.
He did it. He did the song live, and he read a Bible verse out before it. Like, my main criticism of it a little bit is that, like, the helplessness and the woe is me and the victim mentality, I just don't like that out there in the world.
That too.
I don't like, conservatives wailing on themselves and self-flagellating. And
I mean, it's very similar to contemporary Black politics in that way, right? This is the white version of that victimhood politics, Yeah.
But I mean, I'm all for any song about those Yankees who want to run our lives and think they're better than us, and
I'm, as I said, I have mixed feelings about it. I guess overall, though, I don't know.
My guy Brian McClanahan loves it and sees it in the Southern tradition, harkening all the way back to "I'm a Good Old Rebel" and all the Hank Williams Jr. songs.
He's right about that, as I said. Like, he's, the populist tradition, you could argue, comes from the South. You have a lot sort of in the 19th century there in the South, and then it spreads up into the North. No, he's dead right. I mean, I saw that immediately. Like, it comes straight out of, like, classic American populist politics, much of which is Southern. And, the more I think about it, it is. I mean, you think about the culture of populism is often agrarian. That's what singled it out from Marxism and socialism, the communist movements.
Yeah, Brian traces us all the way back to Thomas Jefferson on this one.
The populist movements in this country have largely been, until recently, agrarian. Therefore, more in the South, many in Oklahoma. By the way, Oklahoma was the center of both the Socialist Party and the Populist Party, of all things. 100 years ago, people don't know this. It was the most radical state by far in the country. And so the inflections, the ideas, the emphases, the lack of class analysis, which is all that separates it from Marxism. Another thing that separates from the Marxist movements in this country is that it's organic as fuck, in that it comes always straight. It comes from Americans who were born here, often whose parents were born here. It's not from immigrants. It's not from, one could say it's largely white. I think that would be fair to say. But I think that's because since 1865. No, entirely, because under slavery, they were also wards of the state. Black people have been wards of the state, although I would say since 1865, formally so, wards of the state under its protection in various ways. And that protectorship has only increased in strength and domination ever since. So that's why, so they, in a sense, have always been, in a sense, a part of the system of control of central power that the populists have always organized against. It's always been an idea. Populism has always been an idea of there being this central power organized or directed by a cabal of elites, of government, and as I said, in business elites. And it's not, as opposed to the Marxist analysis, that there are two classes. There's the capitalist class that owns the means of production and rules our politics and dominates the world and are the imperialists. And then there's the working class, who are the people who don't own the means of production and must work to live. And those two classes are pitted against each other in constant struggle until one day the working class is victorious, seizes the means of production, and institutes communism. So whereas with the populists, they also don't, another difference, the populists in this country, I can't think of one movement that's had that an utopian ideal as part of its ideology, right? If we do this, if we organize and accomplish this thing in politics, we will achieve this utopia. Here's the future, where Marxism and socialism and communism is just always going on about utopia, the socialist utopia. I mean, that's the promise they have for the working class, right? Here, come organize with us, join a union, join the Socialist Party, start a revolution, and you will live like this, the Potemkin village idea, the Soviet Potemkin village idea, the perfect little life that's all fake. I don't remember populists ever doing that, except many of them were Christian and evangelical and millenarian, and did talk about sort of the coming of the Lord in various ways, but that was different than their politics. They didn't infuse their politics with that. So no, it's not been a utopian movement either, ever, in this country that I can think of, unlike the socialism. So lots of ways in which it's very different. Very American. Socialism is very European. Socialism has been very intellectual. Populism less so. Although populists have had their intellectuals and still do. I mean, I think Steve Bannon's an intellectual, for sure. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And Oliver Anthony, is that his name?
Yeah.
Oliver Anthony, that song at least comes directly out of it. Mm-hmm. So
are you disappointed? Cool. Are you disappointed that there isn't more of a Marxist critique in here? Like,
no. Well, no, because actually I've come more to the populist analysis myself of who the ruling class is. To me, the ruling class is the merger, at least in this country, in this era, the merger of the state with the capitalist elite. But that's been about 150 years in the making, that merger. One could argue it's always been the case, but no doubt since the progressive era, that's who's really run everything. That's who controls almost all aspects of our lives. Our public lives are controlled entirely, or not controlled, but there's we live within a world that is determined by those two entities: the capitalist elite, the big corporations, and the state, the government. And they are in collusion in various ways. So no, I'm cool with that. As I said, I just don't like a few of the references he made. I thought they were some of them were a little incoherent. I don't like the Epstein thing for various reasons, although I get that it's
these people act like they're better than us. What they do in their free time.
That's what I'm okay with. I get that part of it. If it's that, I'm down. I get it, right? They act like they're above the law. They live in their own little utopian fantasy world in which they can do anything, violate all the rules that we, can't violate. No, I get that part. Sure. Mm-hmm. But when it goes out spinning off into these QAnon things, that it's just not so smart. Just a catastrophe. How many smart people have gone down that road? I don't know. It's really bad for it's the cancer that's eating the right, if you ask me. But anyway, I mean, just it's robbing it of credibility. It had so much credibility. I thought until the QAnon thing took off. But anyway,
Again, I think QAnon is a left-wing psyop. But, I mean, it feeds on each other. Like,
I mean, listen, I know what the CIA is capable of doing. Like, what they're capable of trying is even more outlandish. They've tried the craziest shit in the past, so I don't put anything past them. So let's say they did. Let's say there was Operation QAnon, directed out of Langley, and they did whatever they do, whatever color revolution tactics they use to diffuse these ideas. They nonetheless, right? Which is true for a lot of the color revolutions, by the way, which was that, the CIA basically instigated these movements in these countries, but they did get many, many thousands of people and the whole intellectual class and a wing of the political class to go along with it. So, that could be, I mean, it could be. My point is that a lot of people on the right wing genuinely believe this shit, regardless of the origin of it. And in fact, if they believe, listen, if the CIA planted an idea somewhere that a cabal of Satanist pedophiles runs the world and is trying to oust Donald Trump from office, like if they imagine they floated that in Langley, hey, let's try this, guys. Like, okay, and if you believe that shit, if people believe that shit, then what do we think of those people? I mean, that is, well, I've seen them first, I've had close contact with the QAnon people, and these are subliterate. I mean, these are very, very stupid people. The handful of like public figures who subscribe to it are they're not, I wouldn't say they're the dumbest, but they are definitely among the dumbest among us. It's not good, man. It's not good. It's so ridiculous. And it's so like, I don't even know what it is. There's something so creepy about it also, that I just don't even know what the psyche is that produces those fantasies. But when you spend all of your time thinking about almost none of which you've ever seen, right? There's almost zero evidence for any of this, any visual evidence for anything like this.
Well,
like these people spend all their day thinking about, I guess, imagining people raping children. Like, wow, what is that? When there's zero evidence of it. Like, if you actually saw video and photos and saw it in firsthand or heard about it firsthand, or of course, I get it, but there's zero. Like, well,
there's a limited hangout, I think, of real stories of elites acting this way, like the Epstein thing, like the Hunter Biden thing, that sustained
COVID. Great example. Yeah. Gavin Newsom's behavior during COVID. Great example, right? Like not wearing a mask, at a restaurant.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I know there've been lots of examples of that. That was just a really big one. Yeah. Right. Got
it. What I'm saying is, like, this QAnon thing is no more outlandish than Russiagate, for example. And people with institutional power actually believed and executed Russiagate, whereas QAnon, people with institutional power might have pandered to it for fundraising, but they didn't really act any way on it. And to conflate like any reference to Epstein or any reference to these real instances with the worst of Tom Hanks is going to get arrested tomorrow conspiracy theories is like basically doing the DNC's job for them.
Do you know what Aaron Mate calls those who believe in Russiagate?
What?
Blue Anon.
Blue Anon, yeah.
I think it's your argument, which is that it's equivalent, that they're equivalent. Russiagate.
Yeah, there's even less facts on the Russiagate side than there is on the QAnon side.
I was debating with myself how much to fight you on that. I mean, so they're both, as far as I know, they're both based on zero evidence. So to me, yeah, in that way, they're equal. Outlandish was the word you used. I mean, I was trying to think of which required more imagination.
The P tape. Well, the Russia P tape, I could actually imagine, but
I don't know. It's close, which says a lot about Russiagate. My God. I mean, if you ever read the Steele, everyone should go take a minute and go read the Steele dossier. It takes no time at all. It's really short. It's amazing. Like how it was written by a retarded 5-year-old. And they tried to pass this off as serious evidence. It's just amazing. But anyway, yeah, no, that was QAnon level shit. I mean, like what the FBI was doing was QAnon level shit, like the level of discourse about it.
And that was repeated as fact on national TV, like for years.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Still, I still think every once in a while they reference the Steele dossier as if it's like on their side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they still talk about Russiagate. They still every once in a while reference how Russia did this or that in the elections or something like. Oh yeah, no, God, that whole thing.
But to tie that into Trump's fourth indictment. The big hypocrisy of that fourth indictment is
wow.
He obstructed an election allegedly by making false statements about the election, whereas Russiagate happened for 3 years, no evidence, and that's not a conspiracy.
Is it one per week now? Is it one every week? How many?
It's coming up on that.
Damn, man. It seems like when was the last one? Just wasn't it like 2 weeks ago? Maybe
2 weeks ago. Yeah.
My God. Yeah. He and 18 associates engaged in a criminal conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 election, which just obviously is true. So as I've said many times, I was watching the War Room every day while that was happening. When Trump made the call to Raffensperger in Georgia, the Secretary of State, they played it on the War Room and talked about like what a great strategy it was to ask Raffensperger to account for those votes, not manufacture the votes. Of course, Trump was not asking him to invent 12,000, I think it was, votes. Why on earth would Trump do that on a phone call to a Secretary of State who is not even necessarily his ally? Because that would truly put him in prison. And he knows that. Like he knows that would be the most illegal thing just about anybody could do in public office. To call another high elected official and have them engage in a massive, which would have been a massive criminal conspiracy. Why do you think Raffensperger would go along with this thing and put himself in prison for the rest of his life? Because this is treason. I mean, the whole thing is so beyond. And then everyone should read the indictment. This woman is this prosecutor who is, of course, like just black girl magic, girl boss up the wazoo in the liberal media. Ooh, they love her. They love some Fanny. Oh, she's a badass. Her father was in the Black Panthers. Oh, turns out, here's the thing about Fanny. She's an idiot, number one. I'd say she's not even as smart as Kamala Harris. And if you read the indictment, many of the charges include things like tweeting an opinion.
Tweeting is grounds for conspiracy. And where this comes from, though, is the Ricky Vaughn, Douglas Mackey case, where that was successfully used to prosecute him. And so they're just using momentum from that to prosecute tweets now. Yeah,
go for it. Just First Amendment. Who gives a fuck? Seriously, First Amendment is like some
public
funny
statements
shit.
On a public platform now constitute criminal conspiracy.
The First Amendment is hilarious these days to liberals who love prosecutors and law and order and locking people up in prison all of a sudden over completely invented, totally invented charges. Oh my God. They're going to get a mugshot, dude. So, I was going to say Fanny. What's her name? Willis?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dad was a Black Panther. Yes. or at least that's what she says. I don't know that's for sure, but what I do know for sure is, guess how Fannie Willis has distinguished herself as the as a DA in Fulton County? By being extraordinarily tough on crime.
Hmm.
And by using the RICO statute, Georgia's RICO statute, the racketeering statute, which is, there's a federal version and various state versions of it. Georgia happens to have the most strict RICO statute in the land, which, what it does, get this. The RICO statute is completely disgusting and unconstitutional. It was created by, guess who? Bobby Kennedy, Sr. The idea for it, it was signed into law after he was assassinated, but the idea for it came from Bobby Kennedy Sr., who had been going after the mob generally, but especially in labor unions, for about 10 years when he was murdered, which allows the RICO statutes, federal and state, but especially in Georgia, allow prosecutors to prosecute, to bring charges against people who they lack evidence of actual crimes for, but there's evidence that they conspired to commit a crime. So it invented a crime. There's a new crime as of 1970. The RICO Act was signed by Nixon in 1970, and then since then, many of the states have enacted their own. So if they can't actually get you on selling drugs, they will find evidence of you talking to someone else about selling drugs, and based only on that evidence, based only on the evidence of the racket, not the crime itself, you can go to prison for decades.
Yeah, nobody was actually impeded in their right to vote, and the election of the outcome of the election was Joe Biden. He's currently president, so there's no consequence here.
There's never been anything. There's never been anything at all. Yeah, there's just, the entire thing is just tissue paper. So, but they're going to get a mugshot out of it. Now, with every indictment so far, and this will be, I'm sure, the same. For the first 3 indictments, every single time, Trump's poll numbers have gone up. He's now more popular. And the base, of course, is just ever more committed to the guy with every one of these Banana Republic goon squad hit jobs on him. And that's going to happen again. So the mugshot, how exactly do you think that's going to work for you, liberal establishment, Democratic Party? Do you think that mugshot, which is going to be everywhere, you think that's going to convince more people that Donald Trump should go to prison and should not be president? Maybe it will. I don't know. Maybe people are that stupid. But I would think all it's going to do is make his base go batshit crazy, which is what I think they intend to do. I think there's a twofold intention here, and I think they're equally important for the Democratic Party in this. One is to get Trump out of the race, obviously. The other is to silence MAGA, generally, to threaten them. So if they're going to use RICO statutes to go after people for racketeering without even, they can go after anybody, and they've been doing that. So this is pretty serious stuff. I think they are trying to rile up the MAGA base, to do stuff to further this narrative of white supremacist terrorists on the rampage, which they all believe in. Every MSNBC show has some story about, this white supremacist terrorist specter that haunts America, which is a complete non-existent fiction.
Or that FBI statistic that white men are the leading terrorists in the country.
They trot that out daily. I hear that all the time, but they're always talking about. So anytime, a Trump person does anything not nice, that's evidence of this, white terrorist conspiracy. So that's what it's twofold. They're trying to get Trump trying to get Trump out of the game, and they're trying to provoke MAGA people into doing stuff that will further discredit them to remove the MAGA threat once and for all. It is a war. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when they started going with these indictments against Trump, and certainly J6, January 6 people, that was a declaration of war. It was no longer just rhetorical, just political, the way the Democratic Party would deal with MAGA and with Trump. They would now actually try to put you away. This is what they've decided to do. This is very clear. And they are not stopping. They're not even slowing down. In fact, they are accelerating this. They are putting the January 6 defendants away for extra long prison sentence terms, some of them over a decade.
And solitary confinement.
Solitary. I mean, I get sick to my stomach. And the fact that the entire left had not one single thing to say about this the whole time. Not one. Political prisoners being held without due process, in solitary confinement, being tortured. And the left has nothing to say about that. Hello? I learned about that from the left. I learned about political prisoners from the left. I learned that was a thing that happened when governments didn't like what you had to say, that they put you in prison. I heard about that from the left. But now, when it's actually happening, and it's happening to a lot of people, and they're now locking these people up for years and years and years for fighting the cops at the U.S. Capitol, something I thought that was the coolest thing to do. The left used to tell me that would be the coolest thing to do. When I was a socialist and we talked about fighting the cops, the Capitol building, a fantasy of doing that, I'd be like, fuck yeah, high five.
It's funny.
Onward. Yeah, man.
Yeah, online, all the socialists on the day of January 6th were like, man, I hate the people doing this, but I'm really jealous of the aesthetics I'm seeing right now.
Oh, shit. Yeah. There it is. There it is. Exactly. No, they love violent fantasies. I mean, yeah. I know I was on the left and that's all we talked about. Mm-hmm. Killing the rich, killing Republicans, and fighting the cops in the streets. So fun to fantasize about that. Being a bunch of like middle-class white kids from college. Fucking A.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Trump did say he needs one more indictment and then he's set. Like
totally. That was the best line. That was the best line. One more indictment and what did he say? The election's over.
Yeah, election's in his hands.
Yeah. Totally beautiful line. That's exactly right.
Yeah. The chat is asking about the fake electors, that whole scheme that was up. I don't really think that amounts to anything because they were immediately dismissed. And it was like, you know, if they were actually ratified, then they would be real electors, but they weren't. So
no, it was alternate. You're supposed to do that according to the rules. You're supposed to assemble a group of alternate electors who are ready to become the actual electors if you succeed in convincing the state legislature to overturn the election. Then, so it was simply a procedure, a necessary part of the procedure. Again, if you were watching the War Room at the time, you would have seen the leaders, Peter Navarro, who came up with the whole strategy, talk about it on camera, saying, here's what we're going to do. Here's the strategy. This is what we're going to do. And here's the constitutional basis for it. And here's the our legal team who said this. That's a good thing to do. It's okay to do. John Eastman, who's this constitutional scholar who was advising Trump, told him, totally cool, go for it, do it. Which it was. It is. It's not even being disputed, really. They're not getting to that. They're just sort of saying, oh, it was this thing that you're not allowed to do, but you are allowed to do it. Mm-hmm. In fact, you're required to do it if you're going to challenge the election, which you're allowed to do. Like, you know, the Democrats have done over and over again since 2000. You know, you're old enough to remember. Do you remember the hanging chads of 2000?
Hanging chads?
That was the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore. Right?
I know about the incidents, but I don't know they were called hanging chads.
There was a thing where the ballots in Florida had, the paper ballots in Florida had these, you had to punch them with a pencil, I guess. And the paper didn't come all the way. If it didn't come all the way off, it wasn't counted correctly or something like that. Mm-hmm. So there's all this talk about hanging chads at the time. But yeah, so Supreme Court gives it to Bush, and the entire left, liberals and the left, screamed bloody murder that they stole the election. And they screamed bloody murder for months and months and months and months. That's what we heard about Bush when he won in 2000 was they stole the election from us. They stole the election. They rigged the election.
Yeah. Well, anybody remember the property damage when Trump got inaugurated in 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. They fucked up downtown DC badly.
Yeah.
The Capitol Hill.
Every,
Capitol Hill, yeah.
you know, they went through this. Every Starbucks had a brick in its window, you know, but these guys didn't attack the Capitol, so it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. What else is on the docket? Where should we move on?
The fires in Maui for sure.
Okay.
And Lahaina. It's a very weird story. Just because I guess, do we not officially know how these fires started? Are they still looking for an arsonist? And I don't see like any rewards out there.
Yeah. As far as I know, they have not officially announced a cause.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody do me a favor right now. Google a few words together. First, we'll do California, wildfire, arson. Google those 3 words together. You will see page after page after page after page after page of news stories about arsonists starting the biggest wildfires in California of the last 10 years. All of which at the time were attributed to climate change. Of course, the whole media, the Democratic Party, everybody said those fires are caused by climate change, but it turns out it was some dude with long hair who was really upset that we weren't paying enough attention to climate change, who spread gasoline over the floor of a forest and then threw a lighter onto it. Actually, is what caused the fucking forest fire. Another thing that caused the forest fires in this country, in this state, we're the capital of forest fires, is our lovely public utility, Pacific Gas and Electric, which 2 years ago, get this, pleaded guilty to killing 85 people. Yes, they pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter for having equipment that was so fucked up it caused a fire that destroyed hundreds of houses and killed 85 people. And we have blackouts all the time. There was a study, this blew me away. I just saw this a couple days ago. There was a study done, very respectable scientific scholarly journal, studying the causes of all the wildfires in California over the last 50 years. Guess what? 90% were caused by human action. 90%. So fuck off with your climate change bullshit. Number 2, Google Maui arson. Just those 2. You can Google wildfires too if you want.
Yeah.
Guess what you're going to find? The same goddamn thing. In fact, just last year, 3 people were arrested for setting fire in multiple locations in Western Maui, around Lahaina. And 2 years before that, another group of people were arrested for, and it's just on and on and on, of course. And
While
also,
I was researching the story, I was pulling up all these articles, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is from 5 years ago. This is from 2019. This is from last year. Like, there's
constant.
Yeah.
It's like, apparently it's a pastime in California and Oregon. And by the way, California and Oregon share a lot of people. There's a lot of people go back and forth between the 2 states. So it's a shared culture. And I think that's a part of it. And so I former friends with radical, they call this ecologists. You were not an environmentalist, was like bourgeois or something. Radical ecologists who would put spikes, they would drive spikes into redwood trees so that loggers, when logging the tree, their chainsaw would hit the spike and then hit them in the face and disfigure them. They were part of Earth First, the notorious group, which set fire to mountaintops in Colorado because there were some condominiums on the mountaintops, which they didn't approve of. They set fire to car dealerships because they don't approve of cars and using gasoline. And they've also set forest fires in Washington State and Oregon. That's where they were based, in the Northwest. So another reason is the land management of Maui. A lot has come out recently about all the incredible, I was going to say mistakes, but deliberate, ridiculous policies of people who run Lahaina and Maui around land management. So allowing all this grass to invade after they got rid of the sugar plantations, all this grass, which apparently is like super flammable in the summer. And everybody knew it was a tinderbox. You can look, there's news stories. I think you can Google Maui and tinderbox and you'll find news stories from before the fire. I mean, it's like it was known. And the governments there that run the place were talking about this constantly. And then they have this water management dude. I haven't looked all the way into this, but apparently like he refused to allow some water to be diverted for fire suppression because it didn't honor Hawaiian traditions of revering water. There's a video of him. I watched it. I mean, I don't know. He does say that kind of thing in it. I don't know if the actual decision was based on that, but
also the Hawaii government is notoriously incompetent and corrupt. And
is it?
Yeah.
I don't know that.
I mean, anybody who's lived there will attest that, like, it's, you hold it up in your head as like this beautiful resort area, but like that's only isolated to a few small areas, and most of it is actually really, really sad.
Oh yeah. Well, shit. I mean, Honolulu has got some extremely tough areas, but Hawaii generally, Oahu especially, I think, has some like nasty culture. Native culture, which is like super hot, super racist against whites, against other islanders, by the way. A friend of mine is a native Hawaiian who like he told me about this. He's from like working class Hawaii, and it's just like really violent. A lot of violence, a lot of gang activity, and a lot of racism. Like everybody hates the Tongans, for instance. It's like this thing. They're considered to be rapists. And, Filipinos are seen as like sort of an inferior race as well. And it's a lot of good fighters come out of there for that reason. It's a tough place.
Yeah, but the conspiracy theory right now on the wildfires is that some rich guy started it to clear out all the property.
That's the like loony right, loony left horseshoe right wing conspiracy theory. Yeah, I've seen that a few times. I doubt it, even though I did just earlier talk about my belief in a ruling elite that is a merger of the capitalist and government elites. Yes, so it would fit that. Why do I not believe that?
Well, yeah, a bunch of rich people taking advantage of it to buy up the property.
It requires too much coordination, I think, I think it requires too much coordination to get away with it. I mean, there would be some kind of record of this somewhere. We would be able to find some kind of transfer of funds to people that, to government officials, right? I mean, I'm trying to imagine a scenario in which it would be in their self-interest. Like, also, why would it be in the self-interest of the government officials unless they're getting direct kickbacks? Unless they're going to have homes on that land, and then we would see that though. There would be like obvious evidence of that. I just think it would be impossible to get away with that.
Well, I think,
and I don't see the motive either.
I think a billionaire could get away with it, and the local government of Hawaii would look the other way. I think it's possible, but I don't find the story too convincing because like Oprah bought 870 acres out there, but that was 6 months ago. Like, why didn't she buy it now?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's a really high risk strategy for removing the local population in a real estate deal. I mean, if you're trying to like score some real estate, like setting a fire that kills hundreds of people, to do that is high risk. And these are business people. These are not just business people. These are very, very successful business people,
Yeah.
right? With lots of money from making lots of smart moves in their lives. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see
I
it.
think the meta narrative though of not allowing a good emergency to go to waste probably applies here. In that,
Oh yeah, always, sure, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about the utilities here, but anyway, yeah, PG&E setting fires. But I was thinking about the Maui utility. I don't know if people have looked into that yet, but I did see the videos of all those of the power lines bending in the winds, but never saw anyone sparking. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, that shouldn't be happening.
I agree with you too, though. I definitely think this is Extinction Rebellion types, or at least those are the first suspects in my head until something else happens. And same thing with the wildfires in Canada that just brought it up at the exact same time, kind of out of nowhere. Like,
what's the Extinction Rebellion argument?
Oh, just they're like the most extreme climate activists, I'd say.
Oh,
they're the people vandalizing art. They're the people they're gluing their hands to the concrete. You know, they're
right.
Yeah.
So you think it was them?
until evidence otherwise, they're my first suspect. You know, like when
a
wife dies.
Let me say this. I went a little hard on that. I mean, we know for sure, because there have been actual prosecutions of environmentalist activists who have admitted to this. We know that many of them were set for those reasons by environmentalists, but I think a lot of them is just for fun. I mean, unfortunately, I think it's just a lot of people who are just, you get to have a big impact in the world when you're a nobody. It's very easy to have a big impact in the world and create news and feel really important. I understand the appeal. I mean, you need to go to prison.
Like Mark David Chapman killing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you need to go to prison for a very long time, maybe forever, but I get the appeal. And then you'll make news then too. So good for you. If you feel your life is that worthless that you have to do something like that to make it meaningful, then you should probably just go to prison for a very long time. But yeah, I mean, I think there's probably multiple causes, but it all just comes from human activity, not from climate change. Not from the final thing about that is the motherfucking NOAA itself, National Oceanographic and some association, the ones that do the official research on this, on climate change, and they issue an biannual report, something like that, on climate change, on the effects of climate change, what climate change is actually doing. These are the numbers that are used by the United Nations, by governments. These are the ones, okay? They say that hurricanes, that was another cause, at least, of the winds that spread, obviously, the fire fast, for sure. They say, the NOAA says that hurricanes have not increased in intensity or number in the last 50 years. That climate change has not increased the number of hurricanes or tropical storms. So, no. Sorry. And so wildfires, even a lot of environmentalist groups, and credit to them for this, even though I think they're a bunch of misanthropic terrorists, basically. But, they do admit occasionally the correct things, which is that there's no way to connect wildfires to climate change. Like, that's been even said. Like, it's just, there's no way to make that connection. Wildfires have so many different causes. And any link between climate change and their frequency, and certainly their size, is tenuous at best. Even environmentalists have said that. So it's all bullshit. I hate climate change stuff. I just can't stand it.
My attitude I have the same attitude on climate change that Bill Maher has towards God.
Yes, me too, probably. Yeah. Which is what?
Oh, that I don't understand how so many intelligent people hold this belief and have it dominate their lives everywhere all the time.
I mean, yeah, but compared to the other stuff that liberals believe in recently, it's actually one of the more rational ones. I mean, compare it to Russiagate, for instance. Compare it to the belief that Trump should go to prison for the rest of his life. I don't know. I mean, compare it to the racial hysteria. Compare it to the date rape hysteria. Compare it to the Me Too hysteria. I mean, I don't know. Climate change hysteria is actually one of the more sane and rational ones, even though I think it's largely a fraud. And by the way, one thing about climate change, I keep meaning to like challenge one of these people on directly. The measuring devices measuring the temperature.
Well, not even that.
Wait, let's just think about this for a second. Okay. Across the earth, all over the earth, all those different places on the earth, right? Think about them, those places, and having like a thermometer that's, you know, where is it located in this place? Who's maintaining it? Who's monitoring it? Is there sunshine on it ever? How do we know it's being monitored correctly? How do we know it's being read correctly? Then think about, because this is what climate change, it all hinges on time, analysis over time, change over time. Then let's think about all those different places, all those thermometers and temperature reading stations. Then let's take them back in time. Let's think them back to the 1980s and 70s and 60s, the times that are most important, right, when we talk about climate change, because apparently most of it's happened since those times. So take it back to 100 years ago, to the Industrial Revolution. Oh, let's take it back to before the Industrial Revolution, which is the most important thing, right? We need to see what the Industrial Revolution did to the climate, right? Well, tell me again exactly why I should trust global temperature readings in 1825 in where? Southern Africa? Cambodia? What, really? Who was reading the temperature there? And who was recording it? And who was like taking that data and compiling it and sending it to the proper? I mean, are you kidding me? And then I hear for the more ancient stuff, I say there were no thermometers then. How did you take? They say tree rings. Tree rings. They look at tree rings, right? And they can tell me really that 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, it was exactly this temperature from a fucking tree ring underground. I'm sorry. I need, go ahead and laugh at me. It just does not make sense to me. There's no chance that I believe this shit until I see real documentation.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I was going to say is kind of along your lines. When people talk about the hottest year in recorded history, what they're saying is the hottest year in 200 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then the big thing is I'm still waiting for an actual negative consequence that can be proven to be caused by climate change. Nothing. Not one person has died. Not one piece of land has been submerged in water. Not fucking one. By now, by 2020, San Francisco and Manhattan were supposed to be largely underwater. Okay? Like much of the earth. Venice was supposed to be long gone. Nothing. Not one piece of that land is gone. Miami, remember they were always talking about Miami is going to be gone by 2010, 2020, be underwater. Miami will be gone. There'll be climate refugees. I don't know if you saw these articles back then, just like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there were going to be climate refugees flooding into other cities from fleeing Miami because all the high-rise apartments will be, this is like in the New York Times. Not one piece of Miami is underwater from climate change. Not one. It's just this incredible fraud. Naomi Klein, God bless her. I love her so much for saying this in her book and in her interviews. She has said multiple times, the reason I got so into climate change, and she's like the biggest name in the climate change world. The reason I turned my attention to climate change was that I was a socialist and I wanted to figure out a way to convince people to adopt socialism. And I could see that if we convinced people that climate change was this imminent threat to civilization that required massive government intervention in the economy, that's how we could get people to believe in socialism. She has said this. The red is inside the green. So that's what's going on. There's also just a healthy dose of misanthropy going on. And as I've said many times, I cut my political teeth when I was in college and in graduate school. My best friends were these radical ecologists. And I wouldn't say this was true about them, but it was very much true about other people. In fact, they sort of were critics of this. This credit to them. Much of the environmentalist movement was like outwardly misanthropic. Like, we believe that humans are a virus. That was a word. That's what they said. Human beings are a virus. That the highest value was the preservation of the earth as it is, and to return it to pre-civilization. Human beings are bad. The earth is good. Animals are better than us. Human beings are, the existence of human beings is the problem. That has been the animating impulse of the environmentalist movement since its founding in the 1960s. Look it up. I mean, it's just true. They themselves, the leaders of the environmentalist movement, there was just so many quotes of them saying things like this.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Just to give QAnon a little bit of credit here. That is like a canonically satanic like ideology right there. That misanthropy and the jealousy and the hatred of human beings is totally satanic.
Well, shit, maybe they're right. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the environmentalists, really nasty. Really nasty. I mean, it's so nasty, you could argue it's worse than Nazism because it's anti-human. I mean, the Nazis were not trying to wipe out all of human beings. In fact, they didn't even want to wipe out the Jews until the last minute. But, they didn't want to, they weren't anti-human. They were anti-Jew and anti-Polish, and anti-Rush, anti-Slav for sure.
Especially, yeah.
But they weren't anti-human. These people are they're opposed to their own existence.
Yeah.
Which, begs the question of why they don't do mass suicide, but whatever. We've been asking questions about their plane flights too, but anyway, environmentalist plane flights. That's the name of my next rock band, is Environmentalist Plane Flight.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. They're better than us. And so when they fly on their private jets to their private meetings in Sweden, they get to make all the rules to stop us from using those. If they
don't take that flight to Davos, we will all burn to death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
or if they fly commercial,
do you not understand?
Yeah.
What do you not get about that?
Have you ever flown commercial for more than 6 hours? It's hell. It's torture.
What in Indiana? What is going on in Indiana? Like, why do you not get that? I don't understand. Like, obviously, if John Kerry doesn't go to Davos, we're going to burn to death, or my grandchildren will drown. I forget. Is it burning or drowning?
Oh, it's no. Drowning. Yeah. Well, your grandchildren will burn, and then your great-grandchildren will drown.
2 years ago, Berkeley High. I am an alumnus of Berkeley High School here. 2 years ago, half of the students at Berkeley High, so that's about 1,000 kids, marched out of class in the middle of the school day, got on BART, the subway, rode to San Francisco, and laid down in the middle of Market Street, downtown San Francisco, pretending to be dead, to protest climate change. And they held signs that said things like, "Climate change is killing me. Climate change is killing us all."
Oh, that's the worst. Especially
climate change.
Yeah.
Children.
Every kid in Berkeley believes that climate change is they have no future. They really do. They really think they have no future. I mean, they don't act like it, but like ideologically, they believe it. I don't know if they really deep down feel it, but they ideologically, oh no, they have to believe it, right? Someone who's 20 years old now, if you believe in the climate change stuff, they've said 2020, 2030. These are all years that have been noted as moments when the fucking planet goes under. 2050 is the big one. Like, I don't know of any environmentalist who thinks that the planet will be habitable really after 2050. Mm-hmm. So like that puts you, what? How old are you going to be in 2050? I mean, not even that old. Like, you have no future, bro.
Yeah, I know, right?
You're gonna, oh my God, like you'll be not even barely middle aged then. You have no future.
And we passed all the deadlines, so yeah.
What are you doing, like talking on a podcast? We should be out, you know, with whores and coke right now. Like, let's go.
What are you doing here? I've been asked that a lot. What are you doing here?
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
When you have no future, I mean, the question is, yeah. So there was a book written by a guy who actually lives here, I think, who he's done all these videos about how terrified he is for his children. And he's a big author. He was actually used to be like I think he worked for the Times, actually, New York Times. I forget his name. Mark Hartsgaard. Anyway, he does all these videos in which he has his kids, like his 10-year-old daughter, talking about how afraid she is of the future because of climate change. And he has a whole book. I think it's either Hot. I think it's called Hot. It's about how it's going to be too hot for the planet to be habitable. But then they talk about rising sea levels and how we're going to drown. No, really, honestly, which biblical plague will it be?
When An Inconvenient Truth came out, and like around that time there was no zone days. Do you remember that, where like the government would advise you to not drive on certain days of the week?
No, I mean, sounds like stuff.
I think this was the state government in Indiana. They were telling you, hey, don't drive 2 days out of the week, and these are special no zone days. Yeah,
right.
I was like 10 years old around that time, and I was filled with existential dread on this hot summer day. Like, I could feel it in the air that it was hotter than before, and I'm like, it's just going to keep getting hotter. The whole world's going to end. There's nothing we can do. Like, every little thing I was doing, I felt the carbon footprint around it, and like that's the thing that really bothers me, is how it's put on Twitter.
It's just been one fraud after another. I mean, no zone. Yeah, the ozone layer. I grew up with that one in the 70s. We were all terrified of the ozone layer. We were all going to get cancer. Like, there was going to be no protection against skin cancer. We were all going to get cancer because we were destroying the ozone layer. There was going to be nothing between us and the sun, dude. Like, we felt that. You know, it's weird though, that when we live our lives as if it wasn't going to happen though. It was like, ideologically, we believed that the equivalent of a meteor hitting was going to happen. Back then, you know, the population bomb before then, when I was a kid, my dad had the population bomb, the book, Paul Ehrlich. I remember it on the coffee table. Came out in the 70s. And that was a left-wing thing. Paul Ehrlich is still around talking about, guess what? Climate change. But back then he was talking about how the population boom, the increase in population globally, was going to cause mass catastrophe. Famine, pandemics, war, mass die-off of people, just utter millenarian kind of catastrophe. And not one single prediction in that book came true. Not one single one. In fact, it was the opposite. Population has just continued to grow. And guess what? There's more food per capita than ever before, motherfucker.
Mm-hmm. This is my problem with science pretty much in general now, is like, you have made a claim. It is, the impetus is on you now, environmentalists, to prove it to us that this is what's happening and that this is what we need to do. Convince me of global warming without, one, saying that I need to give up all my freedoms, that's the only solution. Two, don't bully me about it, and don't be condescending and patronizing. Like, actually give me an argument. Well,
and also stop saying it might be underwater in 2050. This island chain might be threatened by rising tides by 2070. It's always that. Look at every single goddamn article about this uses words like that. Scientists say that rising seas may lead to, it's just so fraudulent. I am so done with them. I've been done with them. They are misanthropic hoaxsters who, if they had their way, would reduce the human population by more than half. They have said this. Many of the leading environmentalists have said this. They straight up don't like people. They want less of us. It's there. They used to be anti-immigration. I don't know if you know about that, but the Sierra Club was officially anti-immigration until the 1990s, when the Democrats were like, yo, dummies, we can't get elected if we don't have the immigrants voting for us. So you got to cut that out. We're going to continue to support you, but you got to cut out this anti-immigrant. There's literally a deal.
Sanders was anti-immigrant until Trump got elected.
Correct. They were. It was literally a deal made between the Sierra Club, Greenpeace, and the Democratic Party, by which they said they would support each other. The Democrats would support them in exchange for the anti-immigrant stuff to going away, so the Democrats could get the votes. But they were really but makes sense, right? Because immigrants despoil the earth by travel. Human migration is a terrible thing for if you're really worried about pollution of the earth, right? Human migration is really bad, and so it was a very clear argument, which is just, for me, that's just another reason not to be an environmentalist. It's like, oh, got it, okay. Now I'm definitely not joining your group, but I was an environmentalist until I was like in my 30s, 20s, late 20s.
Well, here's the other thing. Now that you bring that up, climate change has like eclipsed all other forms of environmentalism. So like a lot of people on the left, I think the founder of Greenpeace, for example, was one of them, where like our old anti-pollution efforts, our old like air quality efforts, land quality efforts, water quality efforts have gone out the window because everybody is hyper-focused on climate change and how we can reduce carbon emissions. And that's the only thing that the environmentalist movement is about now.
Yeah. So if I had lived in Pittsburgh in 1890, or if I lived in Beijing in 2010, I'd have been a raging environmentalist. I'd have been doing everything I possibly could. It would have been my number one political issue, everything I possibly could to reduce emissions into my air, because I've seen pictures of both of those places during those times. You couldn't see often like past your hand. I mean, you couldn't see, like if you lived in the hills of Pittsburgh, you couldn't see the hills. During the day, there was so much shit in the air. Just obviously terrible for everyone in all sorts of ways. And of course, you want to do everything you can to reduce that. It's a terrible cost of industrialization. It's like, yes, you get to go shop in a department store, but you also have to, for the first time in human history, that's what was going on in the 1890s. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you also got to live like this in the meantime while we're building up our stuff. So that's when it makes perfect sense. And that's real environmentalism, when it's the way it affects actual people in real ways. If some company dumps a bunch of toxic sewage into a river that is used, which they're all used by other people, then that's a real problem. Now, there's a whole question about what to do about that, right? And there's, libertarians have their own arguments, which I'm not even sure about. I don't know if I agree with them, but whatever. I'm not necessarily opposed to the government stepping in certain cases, but that's a real problem that needs to be talked about. That's certainly an environmentalist issue that is legit as hell and needs to be dealt with and resolved for sure. But they engage in, just like racism, right? There's actual racism, much of it being practiced against white people these days, but whatever. There's and Asian people, a lot of serious racism against Asian people in terms of even policy. But no, they don't want to talk about the real racism. And there's definitely racism again. By the way, did you see this thing in Mississippi? These cops tortured these 6 guys.
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, no, 6 cops tortured 2 guys, 2 black guys. It looks very clearly like an old-fashioned racist semi-lynching, and they shot one of the guy through the cheek. And I think it's because they were having sex with 2 white women. I think that's what was going on. And they were cops. Did I mention that part? 6 cops. Were they off duty?
They were off duty, yeah, former officers.
Yeah, off duty. And they knew these guys were fucking these 2 women in this house next door. I think this is the story, I think. And they just went in and tortured them. I think they waterboarded them, shot one of them through the cheek, did a bunch of terrible shit. I mean, like, really, like, horror movie kind of shit. Like, racist horror movie shit. Like, unbelievable shit that just very rarely happens anymore. But it sure did in Mississippi, looks like. So if this turns out to be a hoax, I mean, the guys pled guilty. Mm-hmm. They pled guilty. So I think this is real, at least fundamentally, maybe not all the details, but it's basically, this is real. This is not.
Oh, I'm looking at the story right now. Do you know what the worst part about it is? They used racial slurs during the act.
Right. It's the racist part that's the worst part. It's the hurt feelings that are worse than getting your cheek shot through. Yeah. Getting waterboarded.
Imagine being called a bad name while all that's happening.
His half of his face is numb. and he now has a speech impediment because of it. Yeah, but being called the N-word, really, that's what he will never forget.
We should talk about Imran Khan a little bit.
I was just going to say, so there's real environmental degradation going on that really affects people. There's real racism of various kinds that really affects people. But no, they spend their time talking about these phantoms, these invented white supremacies and climate change that are just phantoms. The evidence for them is essentially non-existent as mass phenomena. There is essentially no evidence for those two, but that's all they talk about. Wouldn't it be nice if we talked about real politics sometime? Imran Khan, yeah, that's real politics. Dude's in solitary confinement.
And we should bring it up because this is, I think, a case of we told you so. I think I was looking at the description for episode 45, and it looks like we pretty much called this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was, so he got deposed, he got arrested from power in Pakistan, and all the smart kids were saying the U.S. must have coerced them into doing this, the Pakistani government. And of course, the State Department denied it. Mark Miller, who's the State Department spokesperson, denied it. I think Liam McCollum asked him this directly, and Miller just was like, no, of course not. We have nothing to do. Denial. And then it just came out. A cable was leaked, coming from the State Department to the Pakistani government. I forget which part of the Pakistani government, but high officials in the Pakistani government saying, because, and this was the key, because Imran Khan was essentially neutral on the Ukraine war and friendly to Russia, most importantly, which he was, things will be difficult for you if he is maintained in power. Things will be made difficult for Pakistan. It was a very clear mafia-style threat. And lo and behold, they subsequently dumped him. That was it. And now he's in solitary confinement, being charged, I think, with corruption, or it's always corruption. Who knows? Which he may very well be. I don't know. But I do know that my government, the government that represents me, not by my choosing, but they say they represent me, actually was responsible for taking down the elected leader of a very large nuclear nation state known as Pakistan, which is of very high strategic value in the world. But yeah, has nuclear fucking weapons in its eternal war with India. The war that never ends. You know, we think we have endless wars. Those cats have been going at it since the get-go, since the founding of Pakistan. They've been firing weapons at each other, and they've built up nuclear arsenals for that purpose, to annihilate each other. But yeah, that's a whole other story. But yeah, Imran Khan, who apparently, again, I don't know, but apparently is very, very popular in Pakistan, and gets a lot of good reviews from sort of smart people in geopolitics analysis. You know, he is liked, respected, I would say. He was a very famous cricket player. Maybe, I think he was sort of like the Michael Jordan of cricket, maybe. In fact, I think he was like considered the best cricket player in the world when he was playing. Yeah. And and then sort of like an international playboy. Did he date Diana? I think he might have dated Princess Di or something like that. He was in that world of super elite, like Anglo Pakistani high culture. And then he got into politics, and he's quite smart. I've heard him talk several times. Bit of an intellectual, and he has sort of a populist sovereigntist bent, which is, you know, that puts him sort of in the BRICS world, and Pakistan under him was making a lot of noises about joining BRICS. And I think continue to. In fact, even without him, I think there's a lot of impetus in Pakistan to join BRICS. But he was certainly part of that general realignment movement toward a multipolar world by being neutral on the Ukraine war and by maintaining friendly relations with Russia. He was visiting Moscow on the day of the invasion, February 24th. 2022, Imran Khan was actually in Moscow meeting with Putin, I think finalizing a deal for oil or gas or both. A big deal. Pakistan imports a lot of petroleum products from Russia. And Imran Khan was instrumental in that. And of course, you get deposed if you do that these days. The United States will take you down. If you are even just neutral on the Ukraine war, they will take you down. It's a regime change target on your head. And boy, they are relentless. We need a full accounting of all of the covert regime change operations by the United States, since we now have a full accounting through, I think I need to look at, there's a book actually written by Lindsay O'Rourke out of Boston College. She actually lists it. I think it's 85. She found 85 covert regime change operations in the world by the United States between 1945 and, oh, I know what it was. She goes through the Cold War, 91. So we don't know. So 85 during the Cold War. This is meaning covert secret operations by the United States government attempting to overthrow a foreign government 85 times. That's just till 1991. What we don't know is how many times they've done this since 1991. And we certainly don't, and we don't know what they've done in the last 20 years. And boy, would we like to know how many of those color revolutions since 1991 were actually covert regime change operations. We're pretty clear that all of them. I mean, it's pretty clear. We just don't have the actual confirmation from national government sources, because those are all classified, of course. But we know that the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, which is the CIA front group, had, and the USAID, which is a government agency, had actual operatives. They were paying operatives millions of dollars on the grounds and all these on the ground in all these countries to carry out all these activities that were aimed at deposing the existing government in those countries. I mean, that's what it was. Yeah. So it's an immense story that I am still, even though I've been studying this for so long and so many people have, not just me, we still really don't know the extent of it. Like how extensive the United States control of the world really has been. But this is the latest example of the United States having its tentacles in places you would never expect. Like, we get to decide who the Prime Minister of Pakistan is. Wow. Okay.
I mean, I guess it's de facto every country is pretty much handpicked by the United States at this point.
Well, not anymore though, right?
Yes.
That's now different. That's exactly what's now. Oh, so BRICS is next week, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to get somebody on this show, a guest to come on the show to talk about it, because this is momentous. The BRICS summit is next week in Durban, South Africa.
You're not going to fly me out to South Africa?
I would I will actually look into, I might be able to get somebody who's there to come on. I'm hoping for that. I'm assuming there's going to be someone in the geopolitics world is going to go there. And maybe I can get them on the show, but we'll see. But if not, I mean, there's lots of amazing analysts out there who will have a lot to say, who aren't actually at Durban. But yeah, so Putin is not attending himself. He is sending a delegation, the foreign minister, Lavrov, but Putin's not going because, security concerns. I mean, he is wanted by The Hague for war crimes. So theoretically, any Western government at any time could snatch him, arrest him, and take him to The Hague and put him on trial. I mean, if Putin came onto American soil, he would have to be arrested. He would have to be arrested, I think. Although actually the U.S. is not a signatory to the treaty for The Hague.
Oh yeah, because
we don't want to be a part of that shit. Because we don't want to get arrested for war.
We don't want any prosecution for war crimes happening.
Right, but if he's in any Western European country, I believe they are obligated to arrest him. So there's that. And then there's, the whole possibility of shooting down his plane on his way from Moscow all the way down to South Africa. That travels over a lot of dicey territory, with all sorts of enemies in it. Anyway, he's not going, but it's going to be a huge moment in world history. This is the year when we see a realignment of the globe, man. I mean, we see these every 30, 40, 50 years, massive shifts. The World War II was one, the independence movements of the 50s and 60s in the third world. That was another one. The fall of the Soviet Union in 91. That's another one. Now we're on the verge of yet another, and this might be even bigger than those. This is a huge realignment. And if you care at all about how the world is shaped, how it is run and governed and regulated, and the prospects for war, if you're concerned at all about the prospects of war, you should be reading about this every day, because this is what is happening. This realignment into a multipolar world in which it is no longer dominated just by the United States, or just dominated by the United States and the Soviet Union. It's no longer a bipolar world. Or a unipolar world. It's a multipolar world. Yeah, I mean, part of that is dominated by Russia and China, but they are not as hegemonic as the Soviet Union once was. So their allies, have a lot of power. And India is rising so fast.
Brazil as well.
Brazil is huge. I mean, these are very hefty economies, with the ability to pump out a lot of military equipment and a lot of soldiers, both, to be taken seriously. So yeah, this is a very interesting time, and we don't know. I mean, that's a horrible understatement. This is a momentous time, and I just wish everybody were paying attention to it, because this is what we should be focusing on. I don't mean to be moralizing against, indulging in trivia, but there's so much of the culture war stuff is just so insignificant compared to this, and I just wish Americans, I wish people in general would shift their focus a bit from the latest outrage on libs of TikTok to what this means, because it's not even clear what it means. I'm not even sure what side I'm on here, or if there's a side to be on. But our world is changing radically, and it just could have such enormous consequences, and I hope not the bad kind. I don't know if this is a good thing for trade. I kind of think it's not, but we'll see. I don't know if it's a good thing for war or a bad thing for war. I don't know if it increases the likelihood or not.
It depends on who's trading, right? When it comes to trade.
I mean, right now it sort of looks, what is shaping up is there will be two trading blocks. And then the question is, how much will they trade between each other? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, but right now that's certainly what it's looking like. I mean, they're talking about, the BRICS is talking about introducing their own currency. And they have all these, what really is defining BRICS at this moment is this willingness of all the nations in it to trade with each other they've all engaged in massive deals in which they're doing all sorts of big trade, especially energy trades, with Russia, but others as well, and infrastructure building with China and others. But so it looks like they are building a trading block, and then we don't know to what extent. And then the West has already announced they're not willing to trade with that block. They're like, no, we're not only not going to trade with you, we're going to try to regime change you if you do this. And we're going to not trade with you. We're going to seal you off from the global economic system and fuck you. So that's where we're headed. Both sides are going in that direction to that bipolar trading world. There will be a bipolar world in that way, but to what extent we can, like you and I, can buy stuff made by South Africa or made in Russia or made in China? To what extent can we travel to those countries? How easy is it to, communicate with people in those countries? Will there be censorship between the two trading blocks? That's highly possible. I guess I kind of lean pessimistic on this. I'd rather just there be a general dissolving of national borders in various ways. Of course, that's what the national populists don't want. But I think in a genuine way, not the way the globalists want it, which is managed disintegration of the national borders and replacing them with one world government. I don't want that, but an actual, like, legitimate, organic, just reduction of the nationalism, the borders, the boundaries between states and nations and peoples. I want to see that, and I don't see that. I see what's happening now as the erection of a big wall, a new wall that's going to be a lot bigger than the Cold War wall, than the East Berlin Wall, than the Iron Curtain. And I'm afraid of that.
Yeah, if you keep talking about Putin as this war criminal and that these sanctions have to continue forever, that's the only logical conclusion if BRICS has its own currency and becomes way more formalized.
Hate to say it, but once again, it was initiated by the West. This is the West's fault. I mean, this is not what Russia or China wanted. Russia and China, all they wanted to do was trade with us. Yes, with favorable terms, but Trump basically corrected that by forcing China to change its ways. But that's all they wanted to do was trade with us and supply our Walmarts and gas up our cars. That's it. I mean, that's what's so frustrating, is it's so clear that that's what those people want. The Russian and Chinese leadership, they don't want to convert our country to anything. They just want to do business with us. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah, when American politicians talk about other countries wanting to take over the world and invade the United States and force their way of thinking onto us, that's total projection, total confession by projection.
There's none of that's happening. And everybody should go look at the Jake Warner episode of Unregistered. He's a brilliant China expert who works for the Quincy Institute. And we talked about all this. I asked him all the hard questions, and he convinced me that there has never been an attempt to take over America's cultural institutions by the CCP. That is a MAGA fever dream, and it's just not true. So, and China really does not constitute any threat that we should be concerned about as Americans. No military threat, no existential threat, no cultural threat. He really convinced me, and definitely go check out that interview. It was a couple months ago. Jake Warner on Unregistered. All right, man. We're now gonna go to Unregistered Live, which is our live weekly meeting hangout with patrons of the show. So if you want to join us, go to patreon.com/unregistered. It's a Zoom meeting. You can be totally anonymous. Don't have to show your face. Give your name. We don't even know you're there if you want. You can just watch from the sidelines. All cool. Or you can come and talk and hang out. And it's great to meet new people every week this way. It's wonderful. So go to patreon.com/unregistered to do that. Join at any level, and you'll click the link that's right there on Patreon. Michael, thank you for this. It was awesome. Good show, man. We got into it.
Real quick. It was Hasnet Khan who dated Princess Diana, the surgeon who was a cousin of Imran.
Okay. Imran dated some very, very, very high level people, though. I forget who it was, but there's something. He was like very much in like Hollywood celebrity world, in the royal world, I think. Anyway, he was a playboy player. Now he's in solitary confinement because the United States doesn't like him. How about that? All right. Thanks.
Cool. Peace.